Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond episode 488. Today we're going to talk about a couple things included Uncharted The Lost Legacy's release date and price. We're going to go a little bit into what it was like to play about 90 Minutes of Prey, and then a little game called Battlefront 2 had a trailer leak before its celebration debut. All of that and more this week. My name is Marty Sleeve. I'm joined by Brian Altano.
Hi.
Whoa. I'm joined by Andrew Gelfram.
Yeah,
Andrew Jagard.
Sorry if this episode begins with me saying ooh kombucha.
And Zach Ryan.
This week your name is Marty Sleva,
Yeah.
or most weeks?
No, it changes every once in a while.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
I mean, your age does.
He likes
so
to mix it
that
up.
would be fair.
Yeah, well, my age did. What happened to that sheet? You just
We don't need it. That's for our producer, but he didn't want it.
All right,
so.
that's fine. Well,
Lost
you know what
on the
else?
ground.
You know what that
Is this
means?
paper pink?
The paper
Yes.
is lost.
Why you pick a new color of paper every
I don't pick the paper. I hit.
You guys, he was just setting himself up to do just a home run of a segue
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And
The paper is lost.
Ooh,
I feel like the
kombucha.
lost legacy of Uncharted. You're the one who says we have to get out of here early, and now you're just like, well, just go.
No one's going anywhere until we do the damn show. So sit down and talk about the PlayStation.
But yeah, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, which is obviously the sort of standalone 10-ish hour non-DLC. I don't want to call it DLC.
Yeah.
It's being released on August 22nd, and it's $40. It is free if you bought either the deluxe edition or the triple pack or any of the sort of downloadable packs so far. But what do you guys think about this date and this price?
The date is awesome. I keep cursing.
You
I'm
did
so
two
sorry.
swears.
I already did it twice.
Also, why is the date awesome?
Because it's soon. It's incredibly soon.
yeah.
Yes. And I mean, the day does have no personal relevance to me.
August 22nd.
My first high school kiss. When I kissed the high school. No, but I think the date being right around the corner is really cool. And the pricing's awesome. The amount of hours it is perfect because I feel like Uncharted 4, we talked about it in the show, felt a little long in the tooth. You know, it just went on for about 6 hours longer than I think it needed to.
Yeah.
So like a 7 to 10 hour game is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm very excited for this. The pricing is, I think, great for something of their quality. I think Naughty Dog is the kind of company that can get away with doing this. A month ago, I bought Bomberman for the Nintendo Switch for $49.99. So
How was the story really emotional in that?
yeah, I cried.
Yeah.
I don't understand anyone upset over this price. I genuinely don't, because you're getting a 10-hour Naughty Dog game.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, honestly, if you spent $60 on the Order 1886, like, be mad about that.
Well,
Don't be
I
mad
think,
about
I
that.
think at PSX we had this sort of preconceived notion that this is something that we would traditionally consider DLC, right? So
Yeah.
we're thinking like, oh, maybe 2 to 3 extra hours. So when Naughty Dog came out earlier this week, and said that it was going to be a full 10-hour game, I mean,
Which is
Uncharted
longer than
2
Uncharted-
is 10
Yeah, I was
hours.
about to say, yeah, Golden Abyss.
That's basically a full-on Uncharted sequel for $40 that's coming in August.
Yeah, I
like
love
that's
that.
amazing.
I think where the confusion comes is the precedent with Naughty Dog story DLC, specifically with The Last of Us Left Behind.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Which is what it launched at $20, and
I mean,
was 2 hours, 3 hours long.
It's even, I feel like it was longer.
I think it was
than that.
longer.
I feel like it was like
I think it was
6.
like 4 or 5.
Yeah,
Really?
I think the weird thing with this is like, so they announced this price, but then everybody realized if you went to Best Buy, you could actually still buy the season pass that included this for like 30,
Yeah.
or like 25 or something.
Yeah.
So like you can still find kind of deals on it, which is cool. I don't know. I think in the same way that when people got mad at The Witness being $40, I didn't understand it. Like it is. I think you're totally right about that. Like DLC isn't a term we should ever use
That
anymore.
term needs
It
to
just
go.
doesn't
I
make
mean, you
sense.
talked about how you've downloaded all of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I don't
you've
know.
bought all the Star Wars movies digitally,
DLC means downloadable content,
which
Correct.
is everything
And
in
what is
2017.
What is content?
Yeah.
A book. You know, like the greatest books of all time, every Radiohead album, like an entire season of a TV show.
Yeah.
Before I get on a plane, do you know how much DLC I download?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of ridiculous.
I don't
Yeah.
like when you emphasize.
I mean, a lot of people are downloading Switch games, so Zelda is DLC.
I've gone all digital on Switch,
Yeah.
so everything has been DLC, and that's like Zelda is a game I've played 100 hours.
Skyrim.
Everything on my Vita is DLC.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like that weird. The connotation of, especially when something's in a season pass, like I think people think of it as like, oh, it's going to be. It's almost setting themselves up to be like pre-disappointed because like they're like, oh, it's just going to be a 3-hour thing and it's going to add minor story content,
Sure.
blah blah. Like this is a whole separate environment. They said it's like the biggest area ever in an Uncharted game. It has 2 completely distinct protagonists in it. Like it is entirely
standalone.
a new game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
and it's just so crazy to me to see people balk at a $40 price tag.
It's coming out about 15 months after Uncharted 4 came out, which is less time than every Call of Duty comes out. Call of Duty comes out once a year, and it's $60, and it comes out 12 months apart.
Yep.
And no one calls it DLC.
No.
Yeah, and it probably has a shorter campaign.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And that's DLC is such a dumb term. We just need to like DLC is going to have that connotation forever with horse armor. Which
Right.
That's so
I was
stupid.
just gonna say that.
Yeah, there's this notion that like DLC and season passes and all that other stuff is inherently negative because it's publishers and developers withholding content from the user who is justifiably, entitled to it after paying full price for a game. And in many ways, that's correct. Like, I mean, there are DLC unlocks that unlock things that are already on the disc, which hypothetically you've purchased already when you bought the thing.
I
But
feel like
it's
those
not
days
always
are-
like that.
I really feel like those days are gone. I
do
feel like
too.
with the rise of like free to play and stuff like that, like microtransactions, all those things like have a bad rep, and I get it. But I don't think that applies to things like this anymore. And it's especially weird because like if you look back at like Minerva's Den, that's better than BioShock 2. And that's DLC, but honestly, it's a standalone experience that I would recommend over playing the full 20 hour.
I just think I think like we're all digging into it here, but I think we need to like kind of throw out the dictionary when it comes to a lot of the terminology that we've been using constantly in the games industry.
Yeah.
Like something like somebody tweeted at me yesterday. I tweeted out a bunch of like Switch games that are like indie games on Switch that are really cool. And this guy was like, I'm good. I'm done playing indie games for a while. And I was like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a genre of games. That's just a type.
Yeah, like
Hey,
so.
you go ahead and quit playing indie games, and I'll sit over here with the Witness and spend 50 of my
exactly.
favorite
Yeah.
hours of gaming. Like that's totally fine.
Yeah, and like you said, The Witness, $40 for that game, and you guys spent how many hours playing it?
Yeah, game of the year. It was like
yeah,
50 hours.
together.
Gone
I-
Home, like I think about that house every day. It's $20.
That was the first house you kissed.
yeah, it's the first house I kissed. It was like what 2.5 hours, 3
Crazy.
hours.
What do they call that disability where you just want to kiss a building all the time?
Old Kisser's house.
disability.
Well, not disability, but
It's actually more of a kissability. Yeah, so I don't know. Like I saw some people in the Beyond Facebook group having like a good discussion about this, and I think that like where it gets a little murky is that when you're comparing it to other things, like if you compare it like to say, I don't know, The Witcher or like Bloodborne or something like that. Like if you bought something in a Steam sale that that you spent 100 hours playing. Games are one of the only media in the world where there is still this perception that value equals duration of time spent with it. No one says this book is really long, it must be better. Or no one goes, we got to go see this 4-hour movie. You get a real bang for your buck. Like when you say 4-hour movie to me, I'm like, I got to pee. Like Guns N' Roses' 17-minute version of November Rain is not more expensive or should not be.
yeah, but that's a hell of a guitar solo.
That's a real hell of a song
I also
right there.
like if it's like I feel like I'm not trying to be crappy, but like if you don't like the price, don't buy it. Like,
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
like,
of
honest-
course.
Like
And you're entitled to that too, of course.
it drives me crazy that people are like, "Oh, great, now I have to spend $40."
yeah.
Like, no, you don't.
So
It's
we've gotten
fine.
these. PlayStation 4 has seen a bunch of these like legitimate meaty expansions like the Old Hunters, Blood and Wine, things like that. So, but those are often considered DLC. So
Yeah.
when you put your flagship series out with an expansion like this one, like the Lost Legacy, I totally forgot the name just then, but is this the kind of thing that will start to change that conversation? Like, do you think that this is the kind of downloadable content that will start to shift people's preconceptions
I
of
think
what
so. I think
DLC
so.
could
I
possibly be?
think so. I mean, also if this thing comes out and it's incredible and pops up in Game of the Year discussions, then I think it's something different. Also because this isn't an expansion, this is standalone. Like
Yeah.
this is
Yeah. Well, we
you
had
could
a-
ostensibly call this Uncharted 5.
Yeah, we had a hard time with that last year. Like when we were talking about RPG of the year, like with Blood and Wine for The Witcher 3, it was, well, is this just more of The Witcher 3 or is this a standalone piece of content that is justifiably like another game?
So
It's been like really fascinating watching this evolve over the last 5 years. Because like Horse Armor was the first thing people think of, and there's all
I
these
still think
like
that's funny.
yeah, no,
Totally.
that's it's hilarious.
And there's all these free to play games and all these things that have happened, but it's like then you looked at like Saints Row 3 was going to have DLC that became its own game, and that became Saints Row 4. And like we've been seeing this happen for a while. That as things, it's almost like there's this like invisible line where something's on the bubble between being a real game or DLC. And I think that's just slowly not becoming a thing.
Well,
I think at this point, you're totally right. This feels like a game.
Yes, but what's making that conversation sort of a little murkier again is stuff like Far Cry Primal, right? Which like kind of almost felt like it started out as DLC, almost like it started as like Far Cry 4's Blood Dragon.
Right.
And then it turned out to be his own thing, and you're like, this is really cool. And then people pulled up the map, and they're like, oh, you use the same map snap over.
Yeah.
And then they got a little skeptical about it, right? And sometimes you see like walk cycles and animations and attacks get reused over and over and over. And you're like, well, what am I buying exactly here? Like, did I buy this sort of like Frankenstein hybrid of like what should have been DLC and what could have been a sequel? Because they're not calling this Uncharted 5. And I have full faith in Naughty Dog that they're doing brand new stuff for this game.
Yeah.
But if people start digging into the source code a little bit and they're like, oh, this is a bunch of like reskinned Uncharted 4 stuff. Like, well, on the flip side, I don't really care if they like put the same fern in 2 games, you know?
Yeah, and it's like obviously going to be, I think that's the word divide too, because it's obviously going to be the Uncharted 4 engine and everything. Like, I think if you look back to like Bioshock Infinite had those little spin-offs that they did, and those were very much DLC.
Yeah,
barely DLC. And the second one let you play as Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, it was like, well, it can't suddenly be a third-person game. It can't suddenly recreate all these different things because ultimately it kind of has to be a reskin version of Infinite because it's still in that engine, still the same game. They're just kind of giving it a new coat of paint where you're Elizabeth and the systems changed a little bit, and they did a lot of smart stuff.
Elizabeth
within that.
played differently. She had very different abilities. She wasn't as armored up as
totally. They did a great job making it feel different, 100%. But ultimately, it was still very clearly the same engine and maybe even some of the same assets. I think this like. Having a longer dev time and being a little meatier, I hope we're getting further and further away from that.
Yeah.
But like, I think Far Cry Primal is a perfect example where like, that sounds like it probably should have been like a downloadable standalone thing if it was really reusing that many assets.
Blood Dragon was standalone, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you didn't need Far Cry 3.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only other final note is that if you pre-order this, you get Jack 1 on PS4. They said the day on the 22nd, so that hasn't been announced what date those 4 games are coming out, but I assume if one's coming out on the 22nd, all of them are coming out on August 22nd.
Yeah, those would be weird to space out.
Yeah, so that's just a cool little note. And then obviously, we'll probably have more on Uncharted: The Lost Legacy in about a month and a half or so at E3. It'll be one of Sony's big games.
Probably be playing it very soon. That's in a month and a half.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
2 months, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
8 weeks.
Yeah,
9 weeks.
That's coming up soon.
Oh boy.
All right, and then moving on to a game that is coming out before E3. Prey is coming out on May 5th. We got news today that a week beforehand, right at the end of April, we're going to be getting a free demo of the opening hour, which I think is awesome because we don't really
That's really cool. Yeah, we don't
those
get that a
anymore.
lot. Yeah.
And I think this is a smart way for them to sell the game because I feel like this game is so close. Yesterday I got to play about 90 minutes or so of it. And when I told people, they're like, oh, cool, is that coming out in like September? And I'm like, no, it's coming out in like 30 days.
That's forgetting.
And everyone's like, what? And so I feel like releasing that hour-long demo is really smart of them to let people for free realize why this game's so cool.
I'm so bummed that we've gotten away from that. Like, there are a lot of things I'm so happy we left in the 360 PS3 era, but for a while, demos were really common.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that's actually how I found out about Bioshock the first time.
Yeah.
was in that demo.
Weirdly, we get demos now, but they're like 6 months later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Watch Dogs 2 is getting one.
Mafia 3 just got
Dishonored
one.
just got one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you talk about Bioshock, and it's funny because the demo is going to be the opening of the game, which reminded me so much of that first time I played Bioshock in terms of it throws you in media res in this really interesting world that feels like a mix of, it's like a little bit of Blade Runner, a little bit of Portal, but then also very quickly, everything hits the fan and it becomes this sort of Ghostbustery survival horror game, which I'm really loving. And I don't want to go into the spoilers of because the story is actually genuinely interesting, and I really want to
from the jump.
right from the get go. Yeah. So we got to play the opening, which I think the opening 11 minutes are on the site, and then I don't want to go into spoilers in case you don't want to know, but I got to jump a little bit later onto the game in this. It was called the Psionics area, and it was just this one single sort of node of the station, which had a bunch of different rooms and a bunch of different paths, but they gave me a ton of the abilities to play with. And this game honestly felt like a little mix of Bioshock 2's combat, which I thought was really smart in terms of what the plasmids did in that game, the environmental cues of like, if you use this on water, this will happen, just the different guns, the different enemy AI behavior. And then Dishonored 2 a little bit in terms of approaching a scenario
that makes sense.
Yeah, approaching a scenario in a bunch of different ways. And it felt really cool because the enemies are scary. Like we've seen the mimics, which are the little things that sort of look like the face huggers from Alien, but they can turn into any object in the environment.
Right.
So like you can get close to like a cup.
Could be one.
Get close, you get close to a cup and it goes like this, and you're like, why'd that cup do that? That's not what cups do. And then you hit it with a wrench and it jumps at your face. It was really good. But then there's these things that are
Sounds
sort of
too
just like-
spooky.
those are the spooky ones. The spooky ones are like the predators. It's like a little shimmering shadow, like the actual predator. But have a shimmering shadow. It's like that.
What are you doing with your hand?
It's a shimmering shadow.
For those listening at home, Marty is
Just imagine that Marty's doing upside down jazz hands.
No, it's a one-hand clap.
Yep.
No, that's my come hither.
Don't please don't say
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh boy.
All right. So Prey.
But no, funny enough, I brought up Ghostbusters earlier because it reminded me, like, I saw this thing, I got scared and I ran around the hallway, and then I was like, well, okay, what do I have in my arsenal? And so I had this one gun that sort of shoots out caulk that would keep it in place for a little bit. And then I have these grenades that I could throw that would take away its weird sort of teleportation powers. And then while it was frozen in place, I could go and hit it with a wrench and then pull out my shotgun. And if, I did it well enough, it would shatter. Why are you laughing?
You said it shoots out caulk.
Oh, I was just laughing because you sound insane.
And we're all 5.
Wait, it shoots out caulk?
Caulk.
No, he hit the L really hard, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
What?
you hit the L.
caulk.
So it was funny because when
Stop
you said
saying it.
It's caulk.
Stop saying
Am I not
caulk.
pronouncing it right?
Yes,
No,
you
you're
just
fine.
got to
You're
stop saying that
pronouncing it
word.
Why?
You see, it's funny because that's also a slang term for male genitalia.
There we go. Thank you
so,
very much.
Yeah.
People call it caulk?
Well, not
But
that
also
particular
I said
word.
What is
shooting.
wrong with
I
you?
also said it shoots out caulk. So do you think it's firing off penises?
It's a gun that
when
shoots
your brain
flames.
works as dumb as mine does, it doesn't matter if the bridge is that small.
Also, Altano and I have this special thing where, like, you can say something that is totally in bounds, and out of the corner of my eye, I see him looking right at me with a smirk on his
Like
face.
Ganon's night cream?
Yeah.
Yep.
Link together, Thursdays at 3 p.m.
But yeah, it was also, so the combat scenario was really cool. Exploring and scanning the environment reminded me a little bit of like almost in Horizon and Zelda. This is the year of the
Metroid
scan.
Prime kind of thing?
Yeah,
too?
so I was saying how like I feel like this is the year of the scan. A lot of games are doing the scan thing, but you have this like eye you bring up and then you can scan the different aliens, and the more you scan them, you start to unlock the ability to get alien powers. But then as you
That's
upgrade your skill tree, if you start to become sort of too alien, the AI on the ship will see you as a threat.
Whoa,
and
cool.
so turrets will start firing at you. And so it's this like really interesting balance of, it's sort of like a morality thing, but it's not black and white. It is
Right.
like, how human do you want to stay, or how much do you want to lean heavily into
Such
the
a
alien
good
thing?
idea. Yeah,
that's
It is
really
super
smart.
cool. And then there's actual just legit morality things that come up. Like I entered this room that there was a prisoner, and it was played by Walton Goggins. Weirdly enough, I didn't even realize he was in the game. I was just like listening. I'm like, that's totally Walton Goggins. And he's like, hey, if you let me out of here, I'll give you the code to the armory. And there's a ton of weapons in there. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. And then I click the computer and it says, you can let him out or you can look at his file. And I looked at his file. I'm like, oh, why is he in this prison? And it was like human trafficking. And I'm like, well, you're an awful dude. And I like confront him about it. He's like, no, man, that was a lie. And then you could choose to either let him out or just put a bunch of mimics into the room. And so you could just murder him. But so I let him out. He gave me the code, and then I beat him to death with a wrench.
What?
And then like the AI on the ship started talking to me about like morality, and that how like the aliens
Somebody
kill,
ought to.
like it was like the aliens kill because they don't know any better. Like you have a choice and you made this choice. Like
my
how do you feel
God.
about it? And I was like, I feel pretty good.
Pretty awesome.
But if
Were
you let-
you like, I've seen Justified.
yeah.
This is
Yeah,
Justified.
Yeah, I know what Boyd Crowder's going to do to me. But yeah, it was also cool that if you let him out, that he in turn will sort of exist throughout the game and like sort of go back to the main hub, and he becomes a character that actually impacts the ending. So
Keeps on trafficking.
he keeps on trafficking. Yeah. So the game was really cool. I was totally sold. I knew very little about it aside from sort of the E3 trailers.
Do you think they're sending it off to die?
I hope not. I think they're doing everything in
They're
their
trying
power.
to do the opposite.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
I mean-
by getting it ahead of E3, by getting it ahead
And
of
this demo
by
thing,
giving,
I think is really smart.
I think it's super smart for them to do a demo. Did we learn about this game at E3 2015 or 2016? Do you remember when that reveal was?
2016.
It was last year. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's really
and then they
interesting
showed
that.
it at QuakeCon after that.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's really interesting that this is one of those games that like has a very short turnaround. That's less than a year from announcement to being in stores available. to
And
buy.
they had so much success with Doom last year in that spot.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's funny that on this show, we've talked about how that's the sort of release that we want to see. Like we don't want to hear about it until it's almost ready, and then show it to us, and then give it to us 6 to 9 months down the line.
Yes.
But nobody's talking about Prey in that way. Like nobody's talking about how quick that turnaround was.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because all the announcements about this game have sort of flown under the radar. And given what it's doing, I hope that it's a tremendous success for them.
I mean, it's just,
It totally does feel like BioShock 2 in terms of like
That's
the more I
awesome.
think about it, the more of like
Can you set traps?
there's you can totally set traps. There is sort of a voice in your ear that is constantly propelling you forward that you're like, can I trust this person? Like I'm totally
I'm one of the weird people that really like BioShock 2.
Yeah.
I love the combat in
Me
BioShock
too.
2. Yeah, I thought the way that you could set up traps because you knew that enemies would be flooding into that room was super interesting.
Yeah.
Like I'm fully aware that it's a sort of rehash of / shell of the former game, and that the third one took a lot more new creative liberties. But I think it did a lot of cool stuff.
mechanically, it's way superior to Bioshock.
Oh, yeah.
It's
the story's
just
not
a
as
story.
good. Yeah.
And I
sounds
like
good,
those
yeah.
lady daddies.
Yeah. I just wanted to take 1 second to be like, how smart is Bethesda? Like,
Yeah.
what a good,
Yeah.
like, not that they were ever like doing badly, but it's just like their last couple years, like they really seem to get it.
Yeah.
And like, I questioned a lot of what they were doing for a while, but man, like the stretch they'll have, like assuming Prey is as good as it seems to be, like the stretch they'll have of like Doom, of Fallout 4 obviously doing well, and then Doom and this
Wolfenstein.
and Dishonored,
Dishonored
and
2, yeah,
Wolfenstein.
Wolfenstein.
Yeah, like they're
Evil
having
Within, like,
such
yeah.
a good few years.
Well, and I feel like they're a company especially that puts their muscle behind the things that they really believe in.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, like Dishonored 2, Dishonored wasn't like, it was a critical darling, but I'm not sure that it was like huge commercial success.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. But then they put out Dishonored 2 last year, and that was my favorite game of all last year. Like that game was amazing, and they did it based, as far as I can tell, solely on the precedence that Dishonored 1 was amazing, and this team creates great stuff, so let them have a second shot at a franchise that could be something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, they have their own press conference at E3, which like a couple years ago, everyone had their own press conference, right? Like if you look at like Konami's disastrous press conference when they were doing their own thing. So I think they've done a good job of sort of like stacking what that run of show looks like every year. Every year I'm kind of like, how do you fill an hour with Bethesda stuff? And then they're like, oh, Fallout for iPhone.
Well,
Or
and
like
that's the
they'll do
thing.
Fallout VR this time around. Like,
That's the thing is like, regardless of the praise and the Dishonors that they're showing, they'll always have something Fallout related, something Elder Scrolls related to bank on to be a huge success that way.
I wonder, like, yeah, I'm super fascinated by them as a company because they operate in this really smart, independent sphere where they're kind of just doing what they want to do. Like they're not playing by the rules, and like Fallout being announced so shortly before it released, and just some of the stuff they're doing, I'm just genuinely impressed by what they've done.
Also, they're
last week.
carrying that flag of like this single player campaign, the single player first person campaign, which very few shooters are doing now, or very few first person games are doing now.
Yeah.
Which I think is super cool.
One more question on Prey. Did you play the original?
Yeah, I played
Do
through
you
all the
see-
original. There's no.
Do you see any DNA from the
literally
original
none.
in this game?
Literally
This is a
none.
complete reboot.
This is completely
from the ground
different.
up.
The fact that it's named Prey is weird to me.
Not
I have a feeling
necessarily,
they'll do
not,
like an Easter egg.
not even narratively, but like mechanically, nothing.
No. The first one was
so
it was an
crazy.
early. I played it early 360. It was a very bare bones shooter.
Yeah.
Some with an interesting story, and it had
Yeah.
the weird sort of spirit realm that you would go to. It was
And that was
sort
the
of
thing, like,
problematic.
Yeah.
I actually don't really like the first Prey that much, but then the demo of Prey 2 we saw at E3 2011
Yeah.
was great,
Yeah.
and then that died obviously
Yeah.
and became this, which seems great in a totally different way.
I'm super glad with what we have now. Like I'm a little bummed that the vagina doors are gone.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna
There's
be crawling through any of
Georgia
those.
O'Keeffe Museum somewhere.
Yeah,
You can't have vagina doors and a gun that shoots caulk in the same game. It's just asking for trouble. So
Moving on to something that doesn't have either of those things.
maybe, we don't know.
We know that Battlefront 2 is going to get its full reveal this weekend at Star Wars Celebration, alongside obviously the Last Jedi trailer.
Yep.
Also, just stay tuned to IGN all weekend for amazing on the ground celebration coverage. Max
Yeah,
and Alana
we
and
have
a bunch of folks.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have a gaggle of people going to that.
What is
and-
Last Jedi's Friday, Battlefront
So
Saturday?
there's Thursday there's a 40th anniversary Star Wars panel, which is kind of the wild card, could be whatever. Friday's Last Jedi, and then Saturday's Battlefront.
Yeah. So all weekend is everything Star Wars, but obviously, because this happens with every video game, a short 30-second Sony-centric trailer for Battlefront 2 leaked. And Brian, obviously you're the biggest Star Wars fan.
Oh,
What
yeah,
did
of
you
course.
think?
So Battlefront is a game I really, really adored, obviously. Zach, you played it a lot too.
Yeah.
You guys both played it a little bit here and there, right?
Yep.
I think that like mechanically it was incredibly sound. Graphics wise, it was the most beautiful Star Wars game ever made by a landslide. And what people were sort of perturbed about was that there was no single player campaign, and that the package felt a little bare bones at launch. It grew, right? When you look back on Battlefront now, someone who bought Battlefront today for the first time would be like, I don't know what everybody was complaining about. Because within a month or so of release, we got like that Jakku DLC. We ended up getting
We got Rogue One stuff.
got Rogue One stuff. So Battlefront ended up spanning the original trilogy, and then all the way to Jakku, which took place after, before Force Awakens, and then Rogue One, which took place before A New Hope.
New Hope, yeah.
So it kind of banked around like 4.5 movies worth of stuff. Which
added
is
a bunch
really
of
cool.
heroes,
Yep, they added a bunch of heroes. They added
PSVR stuff.
PSVR stuff. There was sort of Chewbacca and Jabba's Palace. Like some of my favorite environments in the original trilogy were there. But a lot of people who grew up with the old school Battlefronts, felt that it was sorely lacking in a lot of departments. Eventually, they added stuff like bots. They added stuff like prequel DLC, or So prequel stuff was in the original, but it was nowhere to be found in this game. That said, we got a 30-second teaser for Battlefront 2. It looks like it's got a single-player campaign.
Yeah.
It looks like it stars a female TIE fighter pilot
who's on Endor and
on
watches
Endor.
the Death Star
Watches the-
explode,
that
which
was
is
so
such a cool
cool.
shot.
Yeah.
Like, the beginning of that trailer is so good.
Which is really, really awesome because it's like, I love Return of the Jedi. It's my favorite Star Wars movie. That movie ends with a party, which you presume, and a bunch of like Ewoks clean up a mess on Monday morning. And then they're like, oh, thanks. And then we don't hear anything until Force Awakens, right? And there's some books that fill in the, like Aftermath that I'm not really crazy about. But in terms of like visually actually seeing what happened afterwards, like the post Return of the Jedi, like the Empire blew up.
Yeah.
Like things exploded everywhere. There's a war on a planet with teddy bears.
Yeah.
Like what happened after that?
Well, also,
this game
it's
looks like
such
it's
an
going to
interesting
exploit
take.
that.
It's such an interesting take because we don't often get to play as the Empire.
Yeah,
Ever.
And it's
Yeah,
also
ever.
interesting that it's like,
Not very often.
like imagine if like you go on a work trip and then all of a sudden you like are looking over at California and just explodes.
Yeah.
Well, what happens now?
No, yeah,
Now what do I
totally.
do with my life?
Totally. So,
Oh no, all my stuff.
yeah. So we know this is going to have a single player thing in it. They emphasize the word story pretty heavily in the trailer, and then the multiplayer aspect that spans all movies now. It seems like it's going to span. So we saw Rey, we saw Darth Maul. So it goes all the way Darth Maul. Darth Maul here.
Yoda's in there.
Yoda's in it, which is really awesome. So I imagine that's going to be the prequel era Yoda who's doing cartwheels and not the die in a bed Yoda that we remember from the who just goes.
That'd be really funny.
And then he just melts into bed.
That'd be really funny if you just called him into battle and he just lays there and then disappears.
that
Like,
little toad man that steals Luke Skywalker's Lara
bars?
bar or whatever. Yeah, so this is really awesome. If you're a Star Wars fan, it sounds like it's going to have everything you want in it. We also saw a glimpse of a Tauntaun running full speed through battle, which means
like
there might
running
be,
into something.
yeah, which means there might be like rideable mounts now.
Oh wow, I
I could totally
thought of that. Yeah.
hopping on a dewback or a
Yeah.
bantha.
Yeah.
So the way Battlefield handled vehicles versus the way Battlefront handled vehicles, kind of
like a power up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Battlefront, the idea of getting in a TIE fighter in the middle of these massive battles, and let's be honest, like the AT-AT battles in Battlefront, like the Walker Assault missions were incredible.
Yeah.
Like the scope of those
Amazing.
things, seeing Walker Assault on Endor for the first time practically made me tear up. Like I put surround sound on, I like put it on my TV, and I was just like, this is gorgeous. Like I've never seen anything like this.
And then your team didn't help you, and
Yeah, and then it was like, it was just got kind of lost. But then I got into a chicken walker for the first time, and it got shot down pretty quick. Or I got into like a U-wing, or and it blew up within a few seconds.
or even in like the fighter squadron mode, whatever
Yeah.
it's called, like when you would be like, oh, I finally got the slave one, and you have for like 10 seconds, and you're
Well, that was the other thing. Like, it would be this race to get this power up where someone would either get Slave One or the Millennium Falcon, and they'd pretty much dominate in it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't get it in the first 10 seconds, you weren't riding that
get it.
ship. You were just flying an X-Wing around.
Yeah.
So everything felt a little more slower paced than it needed to. And I think they're really going to fix that this time around. So that's my hope.
Yeah.
Is that vehicles feel a lot more like jump in, jump out.
Yeah.
They don't feel like a perk that disappears.
Well,
in
I would
half
just
a
love if
second.
they were actual persistent vehicles rather than the power up, because I
Right,
think that
yeah.
was the problem, was like running for that disc or whatever. It just always felt like it was never
Yeah.
quite right.
And also in terms of locations, like make fun of the prequels for being bad movies, which they are. Like the locations and the things are cool in a
Yeah.
game sense. Like Naboo is a cool different planet. Kashyyyk is a cool different planet.
Geonosis.
Kamino, Geonosis.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if there's like urban warfare on Coruscant,
Yeah.
like that could all be
With,
really
like, battle
cool.
droids, like,
yeah,
all the
I mean,
Yeah.
the idea of like doing this like battle on the sort of decks of Kamino, where like this thunderstorm
storm,
going
yeah,
down,
yeah.
and having that run through the engine that ran Battlefront, but looking even better.
better.
Or like it would be
Frostbite
cool to have a
engine.
mode in the Senate chamber where you just sit down and talk about diplomacy for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then all of a sudden you look at Yoda and he's just dying and melting.
Do you think you'll be able to fight on that hill that Anakin rolls around on with those fat elephants?
Oh, yeah.
What about that pear he floats across the table? And he's like, I like this pear.
This trailer was really cool. I'm pretty excited for seeing more on Saturday. 'Cause
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
like, the story is such a big question mark for me, and I want to. I'm like, so like, I don't want to jump into it being like too excited, but like I feel like if they could make a more robust version of the multiplayer in that first Battlefront, plus have a like story I care about, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
amazing.
I would love for them to tell just like a tight, like 6-hour story that's like an amazing Star Wars story, because it's been so long since
Yeah.
we've had a Star Wars
We
game
haven't
that is
had a
narrative
proper
driven.
single Star Wars game
Yeah.
since the EA deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's true. And they're working a bunch.
Oh yeah, obviously
You know,
Amy and
Hennig.
Respawn's gone.
Yeah. I mean, so like my thing is I love the idea of a longer story campaign. I'd be totally okay with something that's 3 hours as well, 3 or 4 hours.
I mean, yeah, give me like a mid-length game, like a 6-hour game that tells a really compelling story, and then add that to the already super engrossing Battlefield or Battlefront experience from the first game. Like that's a no-brainer.
I'm totally with you. And so one of the things I did with the original Battlefront, because it felt like playing with action figures, was that like playing Walker Assault on Endor or like running into the Death Star. It didn't have a single player campaign. It didn't have a story to it, but it had the story of Star Wars, the movies I've seen 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So like I was like, I'm the Empire and I have to stop the rebels. Like I've seen that movie, you know, like I love it and I love playing it.
You knew what led up to this. You knew the consequences if you failed.
Which
like,
I don't
you
have
knew
when I
the
play
story.
Call of Duty because I'm like,
Right.
I don't know who these people are. I don't care who that man is over there.
Well, he's an American soldier. He's fighting the Nazis.
Yeah.
You don't know who they. You don't know who they were. You know more about Star Wars than World War II. I mean, yeah,
Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I've read more Star Wars books than I have history books. I'm an idiot. I don't know what to tell you. Look at the chair I'm sitting in.
But you have read a lot of Star Wars history books. So.
Yeah, you've read a lot of stuff.
I have.
Two quick things. Number one, we should say, in the interest of full disclosure, Mitch Dyer is working at EA Motive, who I guess is in some capacity impacting this game. Like that obviously has nothing to do with what we're talking about specifically here, but we should say that because we've
you're
worked
right.
with him for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then separately, we played, I mean, it's out now, but back at the Gamescom, we played that VR Battlefront mission.
Yeah.
And I never went back and did that because I don't have a PSVR at home. I've never played the full thing. But do you think they'll lean into that more? Do you think we could see more VR stuff? Because like that is probably my favorite VR thing I've done to date.
So my question about Battlefront 2 is really how much of it will be there at launch and how much they'll stretch over the course of the season pass. Like by the end of Battlefront's lifespan, when we got that VR mission, which was free to anyone who owned the game, which is kind of amazing because there were like Black Friday deals for that game for like $12, and you could just get that. You could get a VR X-Wing mission for free. I think that we'll see something like that. That was Criterion worked on that. Yeah. So I have a feeling that they're working on stuff for this game too.
I want it to be a pod racing thing.
That'd
be cool.
Yeah, like
That'd be really cool.
totally. That'd be great.
Possible, right?
Yeah.
I would love that. I think that the install numbers for PSVR are good. I don't really know how well this sold or how many numbers of copies of PSVR Battlefront were downloaded, but because it's a free thing. But yeah, I hope we see something like that because it's awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Obviously, we're gonna have a lot more next week. Max will be back, and he'll be able to give us boots on the ground impressions of it.
Does he get to see it firsthand?
I think him and Alana are seeing it.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Speaking of VR, Brian, you wanted to talk about a VR game for what VR playing?
Oh yeah, so I wanted to bring this segment back because, admittedly, PSVR
Just so in your wheelhouse. Yeah.
Admittedly, PSVR has been kind of quiet for a few months, and I know it's my job to sort of dig in and find the weirder stuff on the store and let you know whether.
Ooh boy!
Great news.
And I found some weird stuff. So let's talk about it. I played a game on PSVR called Very VR.
VIRRY.
Yeah,
VR.
VIRRY VR. So Very VR, which you can't say without sounding like you're having a stroke.
Roger.
It's $10 and it's an animal safari simulator where I believe they set up like 4K 360 cameras in like the African savannah or something.
You believe it or like you know it?
What,
Are you using the term I
so-
believe as in I'm pretty sure they did this? Or
Like,
are you
I don't
saying
know
I like to imagine.
Wait, no, I mean, are these real animals? Or
these are
they-
real animals.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's not like renders of animals.
Yes. So this is this is not really a game in the loosest definition.
Yeah, it's
but,
very VR.
It's very VR.
But it is a great excuse to sit around
Yep.
and look at some animals.
Look at the animals.
Yeah.
So the way it's set up is like you have like 3 or 4.
Guys, I'm just gonna head out.
You have 3 or 4 different. We have to listen to your dumb cat magician video game every week about those kids in high school. I don't. Just give me a second.
You weren't even on that.
Is this your
episode.
Persona 5? Did you platinum this in 2 languages and put 220 hours into this because you went into a short coma over the weekend with your headset on?
Yes. All right. So I'm going to do this real quick because there's not a lot to talk about here. Very VR is a $10 experience for PSVR that lets you choose like 4 different areas that have like 4 different animal scenarios in each one. All of them involve somehow like the animal being tricked into walking closer to the camera. So there's like this British woman and she's like, Oh, you clicked on the elephant. If you'd like to get the elephant to come close, shake your PlayStation controller to drop some branches. And then you shake it, and then there's a video just jump cuts, and there's like a branch on the floor. You're like, what? And then an elephant comes over, and she's like, he really likes to eat those branches, doesn't he? And then he like reaches down with his face arm thing. And he picks up the branches, and he starts eating it. And this happens with all these different animals. Like there's monkeys, and they fight. There's a husband and wife monkey couple that fight over a piece of melon. It's just weird. And then she's like, "Oh, do you know how many monkeys fight over melon every day?" And you're like, "I have no idea." And she's like, "Press up if you think it's thousands." I'm like, "Probably." And she's like, "That's wrong. It's actually every monkey." And I'm like, "Thanks." Like they ask you trivia. It's very odd. So there's a
You gotta go over what happened to this elephant.
Okay, so there's a rhino that rolls around in mud, which is very gross, and he's just like, oh, and his nose, his horn thing like clips into the camera, and you're in VR.
So I don't know if you were watching a trailer or if you were just playing it without the headset on your TV.
Yes.
But I became aware of this game because Brian and Max were watching this rhino tromp across the screen. Yep. And I heard Brian say to Max, "Hey, maybe he'll roll around in that mud." And he tips over and gets in the mud. And Brian and Max in the middle of the office triumphantly raise both arms. And they're like, "Yeah, he went in the mud."
He went in that mud.
That's just a little bit about what it's like working with those guys.
All right, so the elephant comes out, and I'm a big fan of elephants because they're like, that's a funny animal right there. It's like a tall car. So he comes out, he eats that branch off the ground, and as the British woman is giving me elephant facts, the elephant pees and poops at the same time. And I've never seen that before. And it's just like this flood, and then there's turds dropping. So he's eating and he's pooping and peeing all at the same time. And I'm sitting there like in my living room with a PSVR helmet on being like, is this the future we thought that we were promised when Shuhei Yoshida was like, here's PSVR? Answer, yes. So this thing's not great. There it is. I bought it. I saved you $10. But if you want to see an elephant poo and peep and at the same time in VR, check out Very VR. This weekend I'm going to try out some Starblood Arena, which just launched very quietly. I played it at PSX. It's actually a legit cool PSVR game. And Unearthing Mars, which is sort of like a Mars simulation puzzle game. Cool. So I'll be back next week with more What VR Playing.
And that's been Brian's brain damage.
There we go. But for now, VR watching an elephant poop and peep.
Poop and peep.
There we go.
All right, we have about 10 minutes left. You want to do rapid fire?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Rapid Fire is the thing we do in the Podcast Beyond Facebook group, which you can join every week, or you can join once and then never have to join again, unless you get banned for being a dick. Don't do that. It's facebook.com/group/Podcast Beyond, and you can jump in there and ask us questions, and we will answer them. Just like Louis Solarolio. Did I say that right? Solario. I added an extra Rolo to the middle of his name. Solario asks, if you could have any character as a roommate, who would it be? I think he means like PlayStation characters. Who would you guys want to live with?
It couldn't be a dog because I'd have an asthma attack. It'd have to be a human.
So no Parappa?
Yeah, no Parappa, no...
Would you want a rapping dog to stumble in late at night anyway?
I mean,
Yo, ho, ho! Stop the car!
I have weirder roommates. I know Clank. He's very polite and he's a robot.
I like that.
yeah.
I feel like he could just
That's a
turn
good
off
one.
in the corner.
You could put bread in his mouth and make toast.
Yeah, I guess I could.
My pick was Nathan Drake because he's never there. Pretty much have the place to yourself. Like he shows up like once a year with like treasure.
Yeah.
And then he gives you money, I guess.
I'd like Sully to be my landlord. I feel like he has a ton
Yeah,
of
he'd
like
be a
good
really
stories.
good landlord.
Yeah.
Good connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goldie, who would you want to live with?
Which of these magician cats do you want to live with?
I'd probably like that elephant from Very VR. I think he was.
Really? You want to live with that pooping and peeping? He's my favorite new PlayStation character. Poopers Peepers the elephant.
I feel like it would be awful to live with Kratos, so definitely not him.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
He's a savage man.
Or the Bloodborne guy.
Yeah.
Oh, Bradburn?
Yeah.
Bradburn.
Bloodborne.
Yeah. I don't want to live with Brad Byrne. I like Vivi from Final Fantasy IX. He was very nice. I mean, he murdered his clan, I think. That was
I'm
an
not
accident,
sure if
though.
that's true.
I think
Yeah.
he did. No, he did too much
Oh, it'd
magic.
be cool. It'd be cool to live with Knack.
Actually, the Bloodborne guy would be great because you could lock your door and just mumble inside. He's not allowed to go in any of the houses.
I think that if I could live with any video game character, maybe Trico would be nice to just keep in my backyard and just go out there and visit with him and then also ride him to work.
Yeah.
Really?
It'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you'd be like, "Go, take me to Soma," and then you'd be in North Beach. You're like, "Damn it, Trico!"
It already takes me like 45 minutes to get to work anyway, so
It would
it's
be
fine.
very late every day.
Yeah.
Jono Knight asks, what do you think it is about the most successful PlayStation exclusives that seem to put them on a tier above everything in competition with them?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a question.
I mean, I think it's just the talent of the studios.
Yeah.
I think you look at the talent of someone like Naughty Dog or FromSoft or, now Guerrilla, obviously, with Horizon.
Sure.
And I think that's where it comes from.
I think it's, I think there's sort of like quality standard that you see with a lot of first party Nintendo stuff, which you see with like the sort of Disney polish, right? Where like they're not going to just like poop out a crappy movie or try not to, but you look at like Uncharted 4, and if you're going to make a first party, if you're making Horizon and it's coming out after Uncharted 4, like the bar has been raised, right? The rising tide raises all ship. And I think that like there's a quality standard there, and they're looking at it and they're going like, we got to make a really good game.
Yeah, and there's a reason why exclusives across all three platforms, a lot of them tend to be of just super high.
Stop! Will you stop doing that?
Of super high quality, and it's because of a close partnership with the platform holders that helps. Get the most out of those systems. You see that with Turn 10 and Playground with the Forza series. You see that with the Coalition with Gears of War 4.
Yep. I think that's like the quality divide between first and third party among all of them, not even just Sony, but with Nintendo and Microsoft as well. Like, I think having that stable of talent that's yours, and that you can afford to give them time. I mean, like when you look at how Sony treats like Media Molecule. Like they have all the time in the world, and like they're not going to be like when Dreams eventually comes out, it's not going to be a massive commercial success. So like, or something like The Last Guardian, like there is time taken for these, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think Sony just trusts their people.
Yeah. I think. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think it's also just like the legacy of those relationships, you know, like the way that Sony has been able to foster and maintain the relationships with companies like Atlas is the reason why we get to see a game like Persona 5 only on PlayStation in 2017,
Yeah.
I think the level of like character development they do too is really cool. I think their characters specifically are iconic and memorable and interesting. You look at like Joel and Ellie, and then you look at Aloy and you look at Nathan Drake, and even like Kratos, like he's a brash, miserable man, but like they're redefining him right now. And like I don't want to like compare them to what like Xbox is doing, but that compared to like say Master Chief, Marcus Phoenix, and the car, like it's to me personally not as interesting. And I think like Nintendo, people grew up with a lot of nostalgia for them. And they hit a certain point in their lives where they realized they grew up with these characters who, admittedly, like Waluigi isn't a very he's about as developed as the car.
Duck Hunt Dog.
Yeah, like they're not very interesting, but they're iconic and they've been around for a long time. And people who grew up with PlayStation are suddenly now realizing, like, I've been playing PlayStation games for like 15, 20
years. Who's the PlayStation equivalent of Waluigi or car?
The guy from The Order.
Yeah, probably.
Handlebar Stash?
I feel bad for picking on The Order twice in this podcast. It's so funny because I think especially when 360 was on top, I never really gave that much thought to how important legacy is.
Yeah.
And I think Microsoft just not having been around as Sony and Nintendo kind of does matter when you're looking at these 20, 30 year anniversaries. I think like you just nailed it. I think some of these, like, yeah, of course there are some characters that are a miss within Sony's. Like, I don't think there are people who have like knack tattoos necessarily, but I do think that like when you're talking about characters you've been with, like something like Parappa coming back, the game might not
Crash
be perfect.
coming back.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and it might not be perfect under modern standards, but like it means something to see those characters again.
I mean, there's a reason, obviously there's been 4 Smash Brothers games, and then there was PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, which wasn't a great game, but it was able to pull in a bunch of iconic characters, and you don't see that from Microsoft just because I don't think that depth of them have it.
Yeah, I don't think they well, the thing is, like, I don't think they laid the groundwork for that early on because I don't think it's something, I mean, they had like Blinks, but then they dropped him like.
Yeah, same thing with Voodoo Vince, which I don't know, we're seeing Voodoo Vince come back.
Yeah, and like obviously like Master Chief is like the most iconic Microsoft character, and like he's been around since the original Xbox. But I just don't think. I think even that is just like so many. There's a whole generation that had grown up on video games before they jumped in there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and eventually, in a few years, we'll see the 20-year anniversary of Halo, and we'll see the 20-year anniversary of Gears of War, and like those will come around.
Yeah,
like it's really crazy to think. Like Microsoft is getting there, and they're building that legacy. But Sony got there earlier, Nintendo got there earlier than that, and it takes time. But yeah, I love what they do.
Yep.
You want to do one more question?
Dustin Reber, who sounds like Justin Bieber and probably gets that a lot, says, "Do you think we'll see a price drop on PS4 before Xmas? Maybe different bundles?" Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially considering what the suggested retail of Scorpio is going to be, I think that in order for Sony to stay competitive with them, with a admittedly, given what we learned this week, lesser system, they're going to have to drop by $50 to $100.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is great for people like me who've held out.
Yeah.
And like I don't own
Pro,
I don't own a Pro, and I will absolutely buy one after a price drop.
No, totally. I think, and like I've been saying on the show for a couple of weeks, I think that the Horizon Pro bundle is the way to go.
Oh yeah, that's the smartest move for sure.
I'm more curious to see if we see kind of an ecosystem bundle from Sony, like if they are going to do something that like try and push PSVR again this fall with something that bundles everything. Because I'm still expecting
We thought that was going to
Scorpio-
happen last year.
Yeah, we've been saying that about
but it was so.
we
I
saw-
mean, we did, but I think like Scorpio really could come out at a crazy premium price point, and if it does, I think it's less about Sony dropping $50 off versus saying, well, let's compete with them on what we do have, which is the bigger.
They packaged PS4 Pros last year with a 4K TV through some retailers, but it wasn't like a great.
It was also it had just
TV.
come out.
It would have been
was
awesome if they did that in GameStop and just like a huge box.
when-
big giant box.
when you're doing a gigantic bundle like that 2 weeks after something is out, it's very different than 12 months after something's out.
The problem with bundling PSVR and the PS4 Pro and putting them together like they communicate well is that they do not. Like there's still that 4K pass through, their HDR pass through problem, which is admittedly I didn't do what VR playing for a couple months because I unplugged my PSVR to play Horizon with HDR.
Yeah.
And then I plugged it back in to watch an animal poop.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I'd love to see the sunset behind that animal pooping in HDR, but I can't because of the weird pass-through thing. So I think that but we've said for a while, we wanted a Vita and PS4 bundle. I don't think those things communicated exceptionally well to justify that, but I think we could get there one day. I think that'd be really cool to walk into like a Best Buy and just pick up a box that has everything in it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. If you liked Brian's weird ramblings, you can check the two of us out. Jose invited us for the sort of the post show of the Nintendo Direct that is today about Splatoon and ARMS and some other stuff. So you can check that out on the NBC channel. You can find us all on Twitter. I'm at Nick Biggity. Brian is at Agent Bizzle. Andrew's at Garfep, and Zach is at Zacharias D. Thank you all so much, and we'll be back next week with a lot more Star Wars stuff. Thanks.